Pioneer Dominique Reynolds. There hadn't actually been any civilian transports scheduled for today. Instead, they rearranged a cargo shipment and slotted a seat in for me. The cargo room didn't have anything too interesting, just construction paste for repairs and some assorted replacement parts. The flight would just be me, alone, surrounded by boxes for the trip. If we would actually take off on schedule? Just as I started to raise a complaint, the ramp door opened up and a downcast Doara was escorted onto the ship by a couple of crew members. They fitted another chair into the slotted floor before buckling him in and leaving, signaling the pilot for departure on their way out. Doc gave me a sideways glance before going back to his detached mulling. The poor guy was clearly in a depression spiral and needed someone to be there for him. I'd be the first to jump to his aid, but thinking about it now, what did I actually know about him? So far, it's just been all business mode with a bit of banter between us, but we've never talked to each other about our personal lives. What could I even say to him as a friend looking to help? Hell, I wasn't in the best headspace either. After what we found in that facility and, well, I've shoved all of those emotions into a pretty little lockbox in my head, leaving them for later. The least I could do for him is just talk, right? So, what are you in for? A weak smile quickly flashed over his face. Nice to know I wasn't dead in the water with my first attempt. They, deemed me mentally unfit for evaluation and told me to go see a therapist first. Hey, so we're headed to the same place. Those people are good at what they do. I'm sure they can help you out. He slumped back in his chair with a deep sigh before looking up to make eye contact. I could see the complete lack of capacity for anything oozing from his expression. There's just so much bouncing around in my head right now. Everyone I was fighting for is already fucking gone. I don't even know what to do now. That was it, Dom. My goal in life, be the hero that saves the people and whatnot. What's left for me? I don't want some head doctor telling me how to think, jumbling up my thoughts, Dom. I just need time to sift through it all. By now, I could hear the rumbling of landing legs extending for our arrival. It would only be a few minutes before we made it to the office area, and I couldn't have him going in with that sort of mindset. Doc, these people are some of the best in their field. The colonists here are an incomprehensible distance away from their homes, with minimal chance of ever going back. So the organizers had no doubts that this would cause a whole slew of new anxieties. The therapists aren't there to change how you think. They just want to help you understand what's going on inside your head. You want to sift through your thoughts? These guys are paid to pull it all out and put it onto a spreadsheet for you to read through, figuratively. You seem familiar with them? Oh yeah, I've blown through my fair share of therapists getting all the licensing for these implants. I finished off with the best smug grin I could muster. He promptly responded with his signature "what the hell do you mean" face before our conversation got interrupted by the ramp door opening again. A couple of guards walked in to escort Doara to his session, but not before staring at me for a few seconds and making some excited hand signals between each other. I guess it'd be rare to find someone that hasn't heard of me by now. Either way, this left me alone to my own devices. Now, while I was technically supposed to go to my own therapy session as per Captain's orders, I found the idea of roaming the colony to be a much more enticing use of my time here. Nobody was keeping tabs on what I did anyway. I was just free to walk off onto the streets if I so desired. Being the architect for this entire colony had its perks. After less than a minute of walking, I arrived at a maintenance ladder in a walled-off area between buildings. Only those brave enough to venture the darkest depths of the cursed, ever-expansive valley of colony prefab maintenance handbooks could be enlightened to this path I walk. I took a leisurely pace across the tops of the rows of buildings, sticking by the edge to admire the view. The colony was at a downtime right now, likely during the scheduled sleeping hours enabled by the shifting tint of the glass dome enabling life in the area. Humanity's expansion efforts taught us that human sleeping habits simply didn't care about the celestial forces driving planet rotation and day-night cycles, so we standardized forcing the 24-hour schedule anywhere it could be made possible. Looked like some people with a surplus of free time and artistic intent found a way to keep themselves busy. The row of buildings across the street had been used as a canvas, now sporting a sea of vibrant street art. Swaths of cryptic messages in flamboyant, incomprehensible fonts flanked beautiful murals depicting abstract faces and whatever topical paraphernalia occupied the front of the artist's mind during fabrication. Certain stretches of the colony had been sectioned off for this exact purpose, filling the normally dreary and bleached habitat with intermittent flourishes of eye candy. After a few minutes of sauntering across the untrodden rooftops and enjoying the artificially enriched air, I arrived at my destination, the edge of the city where the glass dome met the thick metal ring supporting it. The dome wasn't actually one massive piece of glass that would carry disastrous connotations for when the inevitable breach in structural integrity eventually reared its ugly head. It was instead a massive dome-shaped metal skeleton filled with sectioned glass panes, allowing for quick and easy replacement during a breach. I'd gone to a place where the roof of a building was in close proximity with one of the limbs of the dome's skeleton. This limb was one of the three main structural supports of the dome and featured a maintenance ladder going up the underside of it all the way to the summit. The ladder was meant for construction drones instead of people, due to its precarious angle and dangerous consequences, but that also meant it was more than capable of supporting my weight as I climbed up. At the very summit of the dome was a small disc-shaped airlock barely capable of fitting me. It had security measures to prevent unwarranted use, but a few seconds of fiddling with the interface, and I was recognized as someone with access. One deep breath later, and I was inside the airlock, feeling the pressure drop before the outer door unsealed. I found a lip where glass met the skeleton and took a seat facing the sun. Rays of light hit the surface of the moon, scattering across and up the surface of the polished dome, bathing me in a warmth that no other source could properly match. The sea of dust shimmered, almost like I was on Earth watching one of those picturesque sunsets over the sea. The only sounds that could reach me here were the minuscule vibrations traveling up through the dome, muted by the expanse of alternating mediums. Up here, I was truly alone, at peace, even if it was only for a couple minutes before I needed to join back up with the buzz of reality. Planet Governor Destrasend.
I regret not bringing a face mask. This place was generally untouched, leaving dust to pile up over the years of inactivity. It didn't help that the section I had gone to hadn't been touched for a few centuries now. Most of the stacked documents here had layers of grime between them, requiring me to peel them apart and wipe them down before I could read them. The only consolation to be had was that the pages themselves had all been laminated, preventing rot and fading of the words. While I was reaching up one of the stacks to grab a wad of documents, the hand I had used to support myself on the metal frame of the storage rack slipped on the dust. I fell face first into the stack in front of me, receiving a smothering amount of dust into every orifice on my face and sending me into a choking fit as I reeled back onto the floor. My hand still clasped the documents at the top out of shock, which caused the entire stack to fall onto me while I was already in fetal position on the floor, coating me in a thick layer of dust, much like every single object around me. I spent the next few minutes coughing, snorting, and rubbing my eyes in agony while trying to drag myself to the nearby desk so I could sit up. After enough rubbing and angered sobbing, I reached a point where I could blurrily see the mess that I'd made. Hundreds of previously organized top-secret documents now lay strewn about, some of them now folded over and creased, thanks to my flailing. A wave of exhaustion rushed over me as I realized I would be the one sorting through that mess since no one else was allowed in the vault, except for utmost emergencies. I had been down here for a couple of hours now, and my eyes were already strained from the weak light source provided by the electric lantern I brought with me. I truly wished I could have been anywhere but here, but that simply wasn't an option thanks to recent developments. Captain Brand had been eager to sign the contract with Owl, explaining to me afterwards how it would accelerate current projects and pave the way for humanity becoming a superpower. I wish I had been more proactive during the discussion to try and get better terms for my people specifically, but I am ashamed to say that I brought very little to the table, despite all of my preparations. I already had a vague idea of what Nematorians looked like. Anyone in a high place eventually knew about it one way or another, but actually seeing one in person still stunned me. And now, Thanks to my idleness, my people have been wrapped up in a war against one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Ancient and abandoned mining operations have been resumed in an effort to amass as much of our paltry resources as possible. Industrial material printing facilities have been repurposed from meeting the demands of luxury commodities to pumping out machine parts using human-provided schematics. The humans even created a military outreach program to scout and train willing Meldrin for space combat. This was all done under the agreement that humanity would be eventually repaying us in full for our contributions, but that condition required both parties to actually exist after the war was over. I had reasons to be confident in our success. I'd been given a front-row seat of human weaponry's lethality after all. I've had my head engineers give me a rundown on just how incomprehensible the Pioneer 233 ship was, and I've heard Captain Brand call it a corvette compared to other ships in humanity's arsenal. But what type of governor wouldn't hold worry when facing their people with dark, uncertain futures? Every single species in the galaxy, with even minimal reason to be concerned with their own safety, has a secret superweapon brewing in the background. The Gratonians definitely have their fair share, and the Nematorians are likely holding back their haymakers as well, waiting to strike at the best opportunity. That's why I was down here after all. We Meldrin were initially unsure of our place on the galactic stage during initial contacts, causing us to delve into our own secret research. Those projects have since been locked away and forgotten, yet here I was digging up these old bones for a chance at securing our future, even if it is just a minuscule difference.
Doara.
I was trapped in a coffin, slowly sinking to the bottom of the ocean. I couldn't break out because there was too much pressure on me already. Panicking became harder over time as my oxygen supply started to dwindle. Leaks started forming in the corners of the box, water slowly filling in starting at my feet. They told me that they didn't know what would happen, that entering could be either amazing or terrible, and that I could stop it at any time with the press of a button. Well, damn, I guess I got the terrible one, huh? But I held on, stopping myself from pressing that button. Just before the water reached my mouth and my dread could turn to agony, the scene changed. I immediately recognized the unsettling green glow emanating from lights dotting the ground and the large metal tubes surrounding me in a grid formation. Dominique was nowhere to be found. I was right in front of the terminal that controlled the room, staring at the square made of circles featured on the display. My hand moved on its own, pressing on a circle near me and watching the metal covering descend. I didn't feel pain or shock. There was no horrific revelation this time around. Those emotions had been replaced with a seething hatred, churning my heart and threatening to overtake my actions. I grit my teeth with unrestrained force, splitting them vertically and sending spears of pain up my skull. The scene changed again, and I was in a storage closet, rummaging through the various bottles and cans. I'd been collecting anything with a flammable sign and placing it on a cart, spilling a trail of chemicals as I moved from room to room. My anticipation only rose as I made my way through the halls, ensuring nothing was left without a proper dousing. I made it back to the main room with an impressive haul and got to work. I uncovered every tube at the terminal before flooding the entire floor, leaving full containers spaced apart after ensuring everything was covered. I made my way to the entrance before aiming my gun at a particularly volatile pressurized can. The following explosion shattered the nearby tubes, spilling out the contents onto the ground with a resounding, meaty thud. The monuments of sin received their well-overdue immolation. The heat of the fires caused other tubes to crack and shatter, releasing their own innards into the mess of flesh and fire. The flammable chemicals rose to the top and continued to burn, perpetuating the reaction and causing the fire to rise further and further. It was at this point that my body started to turn to leave and meet back up with Dominique, ending this memory I had chosen to tackle head-on. I woke up on the full-body chair with my skin feeling like it was boiling. I could feel the blood rushing through my face and building up pressure. A wrinkled, wiry hand presented a water bottle in front of my face, which I gladly accepted and chugged down immediately. I sat up feeling, not tired, but mentally expended, like in a complacent and relaxed fashion. I looked up to see an aged human man with thinning gray hair and a metallic nose and eye combo. His eyes were flicking across the screen in front of him, which I couldn't see, but I could glean enough from the reflection in his eyes to know that he could only see text on a screen. "Congratulations, Doara. You performed magnificently in the induced dream."